In this episode of Streets of Liverpool, we concentrate on the streets themselves. We look at their history, how they got their names, and some of the characters who inhabited them in days gone by. Here we are heading towards the heart of the town, along Leeds Street and onto New Quay. Leeds Street takes its name from the Leeds-Liverpool Canal, which originally ended in Old Hall Street. New Quay dates back to the early 17th century when Sir Edward Moore of Bankhall caused a new stone quay to be built along the riverbank to prevent erosion, along the route from his home to the city of Liverpool, where he served as mayor and later as an MP. George's Dock Gates takes its name from the entrance to the huge dock that once filled the area in front of St Nicholas's Church and Tower buildings, right along to Moore Street. Work on building it began in 1762 and was originally known as the New Dock and then North Dock. It was opened in 1771, having been designed and built by Henry Berry, who also has a street named after him in Liverpool. The dock was named after the reigning monarch King George III. The dock basin originally covered an area of slightly more than 3 acres and held scores of sailing ships. By the year 1900, George's Dock had been filled in to create what is now the Pier Head and the site for the Liverpool Docks offices, the Cunard Building and the Liver Building. A selection of the original George's Dock wall is still visible in the basement of the Cunard Building. This is the Simpson Fountain, named after William Simpson, a well-known character in the city known for his generosity. He owned a refreshment store on the landing stages of the ferries and the River Mersey. On a number of occasions, he placed a large bowl outside his cafe to collect money for charity. Because of the number of passengers using the ferries, he raised thousands of pounds, and his bowl became famous and was known as the Simpson Bowl. He was a teetotaler and ran his cafe as a temperance bar. He also tried to be elected as a Member of Parliament on a number of occasions, just being narrowly defeated. After his death, it was agreed to erect a memorial drinking fountain to him, being paid for by public subscription. The fountain was designed in a Gothic style by architect Mr. Thomas Cox. The Strand comes from the Anglo-Saxon word for shoreline or beach. When Liverpool was a hamlet surrounding the banks of the tidal pool, the Mersey would reach right up to this point. Because it has always been there as a path, it was not even named on original rough maps of Liverpool, but it is shown on the first accurate map published in 1725. Gorey is the name of the road heading out of Liverpool, on the side of the dual carriageway opposite the Strand. It takes its name from the Gorey warehouse that once stood between the two roads. The name of this road is a sinister reminder of the slave trade. As Liverpool expanded during the 18th century, with merchants growing wealthy from the slave trade, they named their warehouses after Gorey, which was a slaving trade island off the coast of Senegal in West Africa. The buildings were burned in 1802 but were rebuilt in 1811. Their huge hulk became incongruous near the Port of Liverpool building and the tunnel ventilation shaft. However, they remained standing until they were damaged in World War II and then were demolished. Lord Street is named after Carroll, the 3rd Viscount Molyneux. The Molyneux were some of the most prominent landed gentry in the area, dating back to the Norman Conquest. Carroll Viscount Molyneux had a colourful story, and as a Catholic was not popular with everyone in Liverpool. He joined the Royalist army at the outbreak of the English Civil War, serving with his brother Richard in the Lancashire Regiment. Through almost all of the fighting from Manchester in 1642 to Worcester in 1651. After the death of his brother in 1654, he succeeded to the family title and became Constable of Liverpool Castle. As a well-known Catholic cavalier, he experienced harsh treatment from the victors and the family estates suffered. It was not until the reign of James II that Molyneux's fortunes improved. He was then appointed Lord Lieutenant of Lancashire and was one of the few who fought with any success on James's side against the Prince of Orange, seizing and holding Chester until all further resistance was in vain. Along with other Catholics, he was imprisoned in the Tower of London but was acquitted in 1694. After Viscount Molyneux's death at Croxteth in 1700, his title passed to his only surviving son, William IV Viscount Molyneux. Paradise Street is one of the most magical names on the map of Liverpool. Today it is literally a shopper's paradise at the heart of Liverpool 1. But its origins were more humble. The street follows the route of a stream that ran down from near the Birkenhead Tunnel entrance to the original muddy inlet known as the Liverpool. Its first name was Common Shore. Thomas Steers, the engineer who built the first Liverpool dock on the site of the pool, owned land on Common Shore, and he named the road leading to it Paradise Street, another of the same name in Rotherhithe, London, where he once lived. Narrow Argyle Street is named after Field Marshal John Campbell, 2nd Duke of Argyll, who died in 1743. He was a Scottish nobleman and senior commander in the British Army, serving in a number of campaigns. During the Jacobite Rebellion, he led the government army at the Battle of Sheriffmuir. He also served as Master General of the Ordnance, effectively Minister of War, under Britain's first Prime Minister, Robert Walpole. Close by is Kent Street, recently known as the site of a Liverpool City Council depot that used to sell off redundant lampposts and the like. It is named after Richard Kent, a merchant and shipowner, who in 1768 built himself a handsome house on the corner of Kent Street and Duke Street. Today this area is the home of fashionable warehouse conversions, including one of the old foundry and newly built blocks. But in the interwar years, it was a site of Kent Gardens, a well-known block of masonettes that formed part of Liverpool's Chinatown. Colquitt Street is named after John Colquitt, who as a collector of customs and taxes, lived on Hanover Street. The grounds of his house extended to what is now Berry Street, and the street built on his land was named after him. Colquitt had some notable descendants, including his grandson Samuel Martin Colquitt, who was tried for murder following a duel with pistols in 1804. Together with another man, Colquitt was acquitted of the murder of Edward Grayson. In Colquitt Street stands the Grade II listed Royal Institution building, completed in 1799. It was built as the home of Thomas Parr, a Liverpool slave trader and banker, who also built an adjoining warehouse in Parr Street. Parr was famous for his boast that he had the handsomest house, wife and horse in Liverpool. Slater Street takes its name from Mr. Gill Slater. He was described as an eminent merchant who responded to a call to arms and raised the regiment of Liverpool Volunteers when Napoleon Bonaparte was threatening an invasion of Britain in 1766. Today, the Slater Street area is better remembered as the place where Liverpool's emergent nightclub and bar scene began to assert its influence in the 70s and 80s. Duke Street was once known just as the road to the quarry, since it led from the town to the old stone quarry, which is now the site of St James Cemetery next to the Anglican Cathedral. It was renamed Duke Street in honour of Prince William Augustus, Duke of Cumberland, who defeated Bonnie Prince Charlie in 1746 and came to be known as Butcher Cumberland. A son of George II and Queen Caroline, he became a military leader at a young age and commanded the government forces that defeated the Jacobites at the Battle of Culloden. The behaviour of his troops after the battle and the genocide of Highlander Jacobites that followed earned him the title of Butcher Cumberland, but he enjoyed great acclaim in London and Liverpool at the time. Cumberland was thwarted in his ambitions to rule England and died in London in 1765 at the age of 44. In the 19th century, Duke Street was a centre of commerce, and between the wars, the end at the top of the hill formed part of Chinatown. Today it has been reinvented as part of the Ropeworks Quarter and is home to a range of upmarket restaurants and bars. Seal Street is another thoroughfare that took its name from the owner of the land on which it was laid out. Thomas Seal was a wealthy merchant who made his fortune in the Americas and was involved in the slave trade. He invested some of his wealth in Liverpool property, the best known of which was his own house in Hanover Street. In this drawing from the 19th century Seal's house, it's shown as a second in the picture, which is a view south-east side of Hanover Street from Seal Street to Bold Street. Today, Seal Street has been reinvented as the heart of Liverpool's clubland and was once voted the hippest street in Britain. Join us in part 2 as we uncover more secrets about Liverpool's famous streets. This is Rumford Street. It was named after Count Rumford, Sir Benjamin Thompson. Several of his soup kitchens were set up in Liverpool, and one is said to have stood near Rumford Street. He fought on the side of the British in the American War of Independence, and in 1784 was knighted by King George III. A prolific designer, his Rumford fireplace improved heat output from coal fires and was adopted all over the world. Towards the end of his life, he moved to Bavaria, where he was appointed army minister and made a count of the Holy Roman Empire. Nearby Rumford Place is also famous as the home of the unofficial US Confederate Embassy in Britain during the American Civil War. At the outbreak of war, the Northern Union fleet blockaded Confederate ports to prevent trade and supply of ammunitions of war. The Confederacy had no navy and proceeded to build one from Liverpool. The British government was officially neutral in this dispute, not recognising the Confederacy. Cotton importers Fraser Tenholme, whose office was in Rumford Place, acted as the unofficial Confederate embassy where operations were conducted. Commander Bullock of the Confederate Navy was based in Liverpool, and his prime task was to assemble and run a navy, and the Confederate warship Alabama was built in Birkenhead. Fenwick Street is named after the maiden name of Sir Edward More's wife Dorothy. She was the daughter of William Fenwick of Meldenhall, Northumberland. Her husband Edward More of Bank Hall was a descendant of a family that owned much of the land on which Liverpool was built. A freeman of the city of Liverpool and an MP, Edward More died in 1604. Brunswick Street is another road that owes its name to the city's obsession with honouring the German royal house of Hanover, which provided George I as King of England in 1714. He was also the ruler of the Duchy of Brunswick-Luneburg in the Holy Roman Empire. From the mid-18th century, Brunswick Street became the centre of the banking industry in Liverpool. Hayward's Bank, built between 1798 and 1800 at 5 Brunswick Street, is the oldest purpose-built bank in the city. Tybarn Street owes its name to the Ty Barn that was built there in 1514 by the Lord of the Manor. A member of the landed Molyneux family, it was Sir John Molyneux, High Sheriff of Lancashire. A Ty Barn was a type of barn used in the Middle Ages for storing rents and tithes. 1/10 a tithe of a farm's produce that was handed to the church and farmers, who then deposited their tithes in barns constructed for this purpose. William Pownall, a merchant and mayor in 1767, died of a chill caught while quelling a riot on Devil's Acre, near Salthouse Dock, during his year in office. The square is named after him. In 1973, the Dandy Pat fountain was moved to Pownall Square, but this turned out to be a poor move since it was badly vandalised. Dandy Pat was Patrick Byrne, an Irishman who arrived penniless in Liverpool in 1857 at the age of 17. He worked in the docks and bought his way into the licensed trade, owning the lavish Morning Star public house in Scotland Place. His nickname Dandy Pat was due to his ostentatious dress sense. A shrewd businessman, he also became an Irish nationalist member of the City Council and was a benefactor to many Catholic charities. We now look at a set of streets whose names have survived against the odds, since they could so easily have vanished when 19th century office blocks were built around them. Ormond Street is named after James, Duke of Ormond, who was a statesman during the reign of Queen Anne in the early 18th century. Edmund Street was originally Millhouse Lane. It was renamed by Sir Cleve Moore when he married his wife Anne Edmund around the same period. Bixterf Street is named after Alderman Thomas Bixterf, Mayor of Liverpool in 1701, who was complimented by the corporation for having paved the street in front of his house by his own hand. St Paul's Square is unrecognisable today from even 20 years ago. It takes its name from the imposing St Paul's Church, which was built there in 1769 on what was then known as the Dogfield. By 1900, the church had become desolate in a wilderness of warehouses, and the church was closed in 1901. The site of the church and churchyard was acquired by the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Company to extend Exchange Station, but that never happened, and the building was not demolished until 1931. St Paul's Square then became home to Liverpool Stadium in 1932. It was the venue for countless boxing matches and pop concerts, and later strike meetings in Liverpool Dockers. It was demolished in 1987. In the past decade, the site has been redeveloped and remodelled, breathing new life into the area and extending the city's business district. Prussia Street was named to commemorate the allegiance between England and Frederick the Great in the mid-18th century. The famous artist George Stubbs lived in a house on the corner of Prussia Street. When Exchange Station was built in 1850, many homes were demolished to make way, and Prussia Street was cut in half. The two parts still stand 300 yards apart. Great Crossall Street is said to take its name from a hall or building that was located near the site of Liverpool's Cross. This was a stone cross that stood in the middle of the road at the junction of what is now Tybarn Street. In the 1980s, Bob Parry, the then Labour MP for Scotland Exchange, campaigned for a search to be launched for the missing cross. Mr Parry, who was born in the area, told how local folklore held that when the cross was demolished or collapsed, it was buried on the side of the road near the spot. No real effort was made to locate the cross, and Mr Parry died in the year 2000 without his theory being put to test. Addison Street is now a road of semi-detached properties, built thanks to the efforts of the Liverpool Council in the 1980s when Derek Hatton was in control of housing policy. It was named after Joseph Addison, a poet, essayist and statesman who died in 1719. Addison Street was previously known as Sickman's Lane or Dead Man's Lace, a place where in times of plague, sufferers were isolated in cabins. A famous son of Addison Street in the 19th century was James William Carling, a noted Liverpool pavement artist. The son of poor Irish parents, from an early age James was known as the Little Drawer or the Little Chalker and used Liverpool street pavements for his art and to beg for money. Carling was well known because unlike other pavement artists, he never did the same drawing twice. In 1871, he went to America and found real fame when he won an art competition staged by the magazine Harper's Bazaar. His success was to be short-lived. He returned to England with dreams of studying art school, but he died at the age of 29 in 1187 before he could realise his dream. This is Scotland Road, and what remains of the route that was once famous for having a pub on every street corner. It was originally a turnpike road leading out to the route to Preston via Walton, Burscough and Muggle. In the 17th and 18th centuries, stagecoaches from Liverpool followed his route through Lancaster and Kendal to Scotland. In 1803, it was partly widened and streets of working class housing laid out either side as Liverpool expanded. Scotland Road was at the centre of working class life for the people of the surrounding Everton, Vauxhall and Islington areas near the North Liverpool docks and Liverpool city centre. The population in Victoria times was swelled by the arrival of thousands of Irish immigrants, many of whom had fled Ireland's Great Hunger. The area became known for having numerous Irish Catholic residents. The Liverpool, Scotland, UK Parliament constituency was represented by an Irish nationalist MP until 1929. Many houses in the area were demolished in the 1930s, and after World War II ended, many more residents were rehoused in new council houses in areas such as Croxteth, Kirby, Huyton, Norris Green and Stockbridge Village, leaving Scotland Road in a state of steady decline. Housing, churches and pubs were also cleared in the 1970s to make way for the second Mersey Tunnel. And it is a fact that there were once 200 public houses in the Scotland Road area, now only a few survive. But an area regeneration is underway with the £150 million Project Jennifer, which will see a supermarket, shops and homes built on a huge site between Scotland Road and Greater Homer Street. And it is hoped that the boost from Project Jennifer will also herald further improvement on the other side of Scotland Road. So it looks like Scotland Road will be one of the areas of Liverpool that is going to be transformed again beyond recognition. This is a lesson that we have learned in this series. Liverpool is ever changing. Past and present Liverpool never stands still. We hope you've enjoyed our look at some of the city's landmarks, and we look forward to bringing you another series in the future when we'll take a new look at the fascinating streets of Liverpool.